I thought it was just a tiny birthmark, a harmless little smudge on my baby's cheek. But when the pediatrician saw it, her hands froze mid-examination, and she looked at me as if she'd just uncovered something dangerous. The moment I mentioned I was a lawyer, her entire demeanor shifted, cold, cautious, almost fearful. At first, I told myself it was paranoia. But then, small details began piling up, subtle changes in the way nurses addressed me, an odd phone call from the hospital administration, and a stranger's voice on the other end of the line warning me not to dig too deep. As I began pulling at the threads, I uncovered a web of negligence, hidden files, and a past medical scandal that someone would do anything to keep buried. What I didn't know was that my baby's mark wasn't just a medical curiosity, it was proof. And proof, in the wrong hands, is a dangerous thing. Still remember the smell of antiseptic and the faint hum of the air conditioner in the pediatrician's office. My daughter, Emma, was barely 6 months old, chubby fingers curled around the little giraffe toy I'd brought to keep her entertained. It was supposed to be a routine checkup, something I could squeeze in before my afternoon meeting at the firm. I noticed the mark a few days earlier, a faint, oddly shaped spot on her left cheek. At first, I thought it was nothing. Babies bruise easily, I told myself. Maybe she had scratched herself. But the color was strange, almost like a faded wine stain. I decided to point it out to the doctor, expecting a casual explanation. Dr. Harris was usually warm and chatty, the type to ask about my work, my family. But when I mentioned the mark, she leaned closer, squinting. Her hands stilled midair, one palm gently resting under Emma's chin as she tilted her face toward the light. She didn't answer right away. "What do you think it is?" I asked. She didn't look at me. "How long has this been here?" "Just a few days." "Why?" Her voice was steady, but her knuckles tightened. "Have you noticed anything else unusual? Fevers? Loss of appetite?" I shook my head. "No, she's fine. I'm just curious. It's not serious, right?" Dr. Harris finally looked at me. Her eyes unreadable. "What do you do for a living again?" I hesitated. "I'm a lawyer." "Why?" That's when it happened, the tiniest flicker across her face. A tightening at the corners of her mouth. And then, as if someone had thrown a switch, her tone shifted to something colder, rehearsed. "It's probably nothing. We'll keep an eye on it. Come back in a month." She moved on quickly, checking Emma's heartbeat, measuring her head circumference. But her hands were brisk, almost impatient. It was like I had become a problem she didn't want to deal with. When the appointment ended, she handed me a folded sheet of paper. "Just a general care guide," she said. But when I opened it later in the car, there was a scribbled note. At the bottom, almost hidden, "Do not discuss this with anyone outside the hospital." I felt my pulse quicken. The handwriting wasn't hers. On the way home, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened later, my stomach turned. A man's voice, low and urgent. "Don't let them convince you it's harmless. And whatever you do, don't sign anything." That night, after putting Emma to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the note and replaying that message over and over. My mind kept circling back to Dr. Harris's sudden change, the way she froze when I mentioned my profession. T wasn't just a mark on my baby's face. It was something else, something they didn't want me to know, and the more I thought about it, the more certain I became. Someone, somewhere, had just decided I was a threat, decided to call the hospital in the morning. But I never got the chance, because at 2:13 a.m., someone knocked on my door. The sound was soft but deliberate, 3 slow knocks that seemed to echo in the stillness of the night. I froze halfway out of bed, my bare feet brushing against the cold wooden floor. Emma's breathing came steady through the baby monitor, a faint reminder that I wasn't alone. My mind flashed to the voicemail. "Don't sign anything." I grabbed my phone, but the screen stayed dark, the Wi-Fi had dropped. I peered through the blinds. At first, I saw nothing, just the empty driveway and the faint glow of the street lamp. Then, from the shadow near my mailbox, a figure stepped forward. It was a man, tall, wearing a cap pulled low over his face. He raised a hand, palm open, as if to show he meant no harm. I hesitated, my instincts split between slamming the door and demanding answers. Against my better judgment, I opened it, but kept the chain locked. "Can I help you?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "You're the lawyer," he said. Not a question. His voice was the same as on the voicemail. "What do you want?" "You're in danger. And so is your daughter." My heart pounded. "From what?" He glanced toward the street, scanning for movement. "That mark on her face, it's not a birthmark. It's a reaction. And it's happened before. To other infants. Same hospital." I swallowed hard. "Reaction to what?" "I can't say here. They monitor calls. They track visits. But listen to me, if anyone from the hospital calls you in the next few days, you don't go back. Not even for a follow-up." I tried to read his expression under the shadow of the cap. "Why are you telling me this?" His jaw tightened. "Because I used to work there." Before I could ask more, headlights appeared at the corner. The man's entire posture shifted, urgency turning into fear. "I have to go." "Wait," I hissed. "At least tell me your name." He hesitated, then said, "Daniel," before melting back into the shadows. I stood there long after the car passed, my hands trembling. Every legal instinct I had screamed at me to start digging, but this wasn't just a case file. This was Emma. The next morning, I began searching. I combed through public records, news archives, legal databases. At first, nothing, no lawsuits, no official complaints. Too clean. And then, buried in the back pages of an old local paper, I found a name I recognized, Dr. Harris. She had been mentioned in connection with a malpractice inquiry 5 years ago. Infant complications. Unexplained conditions. The case never went to trial. The parents had withdrawn the complaint after a confidential settlement. My stomach turned. Settlements like that weren't just about money. They were about silence. I decided to confront Dr. Harris directly. I called her office, but the receptionist told me she was on leave. No explanation. No return date. That same afternoon, an unmarked envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a single photograph, a baby, maybe a year old, with the same kind of mark on her cheek as Emma. On the back, in block letters, "SHE didn't make it." I felt the air leave my lungs. My hands shook so hard the photo almost slipped from my grip, and then, beneath the message, in smaller writing, was something that made my blood run cold. It was my address. I didn't sleep after the photograph. I sat at the kitchen table until sunrise with Emma's monitor on loud, a legal pad open, and the old ritual of preparation kicking in like muscle memory. If fear is gasoline, procedure is a wet blanket. I listed names, dates, phone calls, even the timestamp of those 3 slow knocks, 2:13 a.m. Then I wrote one phrase and circled it 3 times, chain of custody. Hospitals hate that phrase when something goes wrong. At 9 sharp I called medical records and requested Emma's full chart, prenatal notes, delivery, vaccinations, every nurse's entry, every supply sticker and barcode. The clerk told me to fill out a portal form. I told her, calmly, that under state law they had 30 days, but under my professional reality they had 4 hours or I would seek a court order and costs. She put me on hold for 7 minutes. When she came back, her voice was sugary and tight. "We'll expedite. You can pick it up at 2. At noon I got a text from an unknown number, "Use a public place. Cameras." I replied with a single word, "Where?" Daniel sent a location, downtown library, 3rd floor, history stacks. I told myself I was going because I needed facts, not because. I was already building a case in my head that had my daughter's name on the caption. The library smelled like old glue and dust. Daniel was waiting in a far aisle, cap low, a canvas messenger bag slung across his chest. Up close he looked like the kind of man people forget, thin, pale, with eyes that never stopped scanning. "You brought someone?" he asked, glancing behind me. "No. But I told a friend to text me in 20 minutes. If I don't respond, she calls 911. I angled my body so the camera caught his face and mine. "You said reaction. To what?" He opened the bag and took out a small plastic canister, the kind used for urine samples, sealed with tamper tape. "This is a silver nitrate stick. They use them for cauterizing minor bleeds. In newborns, sometimes for umbilical granulomas." He tapped the label with a bitten nail. "That lot number was recalled overseas last year. Dye contamination from the supplier. It stains skin purple-brown if it leaks, and the burns look like wine spills. They vanish slowly, but in some kids the compounds get under the skin and cause necrosis if hit again with certain sanitizers." I felt my mouth go dry. "You're saying that mark on Emma's cheek matches the pattern of a leaky stick brushed against her face during a blood draw?" He pulled out a printout of a hospital incident report. Half of it was blacked out. An internal memo. Warned pediatrics to switch vendors. The hospital didn't. Too expensive. They decided to monitor. And the infant in the photo? His jaw worked. She got sepsis after a second exposure. The family took a settlement with a lifetime gag. The hospital kept the same vendor another year. I stared at the memo until the letters blurred. "Why tell me?" "Because they know. You're a lawyer, and they'll make this your fault before you make it theirs. They did it before." He handed me a cheap thumb drive. Procedures, emails, purchase orders, the recall notice from abroad. I took copies before I left. I shouldn't have access now. But I made sure to keep something. He lowered his voice. "They will come at you through two doors, your job and your kid. The first is easier to survive." The first creak of fear turned into a crack. "Explain the second." "Mandatory reporters. If they suggest you're exaggerating symptoms, filming evidence, or refusing treatment, they can spin it as Munchausen by proxy. One anonymous call, and Child Protective Services shows up with an emergency order. They don't need truth. They need paperwork." 20 minutes later, right on cue, my phone buzzed with the hospital clerk's call. "Your records are ready," she said, bright as a receptionist in a commercial. "But I need you to sign a few updates when you come." "Email them," I said. "I don't sign blind." Silence, then the smile reattached. "Of course." I left the library with Daniel's drive zipped in my boot and a plan snapping into place. At the hospital, I parked where the cameras could see me enter alone. The records clerk wore a cardigan and a frightened smile. She slid a latch-bound envelope across the counter and another document beneath it. Just an acknowledgement. I put on my reading glasses and let her wait while I read every line. Buried in paragraph 5 was a harmless-sounding clause authorizing interdisciplinary care coordination. I scratched a note in the margin. "This lets you share Emma's records with partners including an insurer's risk team and community agencies." Her lashes fluttered. "It's standard." "Not for me." I crossed out the clause, wrote denied, dated it, and signed. "Make a copy." Her fingers trembled. "I need to check with, do that," I said, and smiled like a woman with 1,000 billable hours behind her. 5 minutes later she returned with my altered copy. The envelope was heavier than it should have been. Inside, the chart was missing half its supply stickers. No barcodes from delivery. No vendor labels. Cleaned, I lifted my eyes. Where are the adhesive lot stickers from the day of Emma's blood draw? She swallowed. They must have fallen off in scanning. And the original? We only keep digital now. Liars are easier to handle at a deposition than in a hallway. I thanked her, walked out, and sat in my car with my hands on the wheel until the adrenaline dipped. Then I opened the envelope again. A single page had been misfiled, a nurse's note printed on thermal paper, the kind that fades. In the corner, a partial sticker survived, K47. I texted Daniel one photo, K47, ring any bells? He replied in seconds. That's the contaminated lot. Was already turning the key when my phone lit up with another unknown number. Ms. Clark? This is Denise with Family Support Services. We received a referral about concerns for Emma's well-being. We'd love to stop by just to chat. The word referral slid under my skin like a needle. Who referred? I can't disclose that. Then send me your badge number and a copy of the intake. We can schedule something next week. Ma'am. It's better if we come tonight. I hung up and drove home, every intersection a checkpoint. In the nursery, Emma was asleep, her cheek turned toward the camera, the mark of faint coastline under the soft light. I kissed her hair and felt something like resolve settle into my bones. I printed a motion for a temporary restraining order to prevent the destruction of hospital supply logs, and I filed it electronically with the night judge. My laptop hummed, the progress bar crawling. I timed my breathing with it.at 8:41 p.m. As the screen flashed filed, there were 3 slow knocks at my door. Not Daniel's. Not the hesitant rhythm of a neighbor. This time it was followed by a firm, official voice calling my name and the metallic sound of paper sliding against wood. Ms. Clark? Child Protective Services. We have an emergency order to remove your daughter pending investigation. For a moment, I couldn't move. The words hung in the air like a noose, remove your daughter. My first instinct was to rip the paper from under the door and tear it to shreds. But the lawyer in me knew better. Paper has power only if it exists, and evidence has power only if you keep it. I picked it up, the order was real. Judge's signature. File number. But the allegations were vague, concerns regarding parental interference in medical treatment and risk of neglect. I could see the framing instantly, a parent refusing recommended care, inventing harm, obstructing cooperation. The kind of narrative that made social workers believe they were saving a child. Open the door, Ms. Clark, the voice outside said, firm but not unkind. We don't want to escalate this. I took a deep breath and called through the door. I am not refusing to comply, but I am invoking my right to have counsel present. I am also recording this interaction. My phone was already on the counter, camera pointed at the door. A pause. Then a quieter voice, maybe a second officer, she's a lawyer. She knows. That told me everything. This wasn't random. They'd been primed for me. I will meet you on the porch, I said. Alone. My daughter stays inside until this is reviewed. I stepped out with the door locked behind me. 2 women stood on my porch, one in plain clothes holding a clipboard. The other in a navy jacket with CPS embroidered on the chest. A police cruiser idled at the curb. The woman with the clipboard introduced herself as Denise, the same voice from the phone call. She handed me a second document, the intake summary. The source was marked confidential, but the incident description was a carefully planted trap. Mother believes infant injured by hospital staff, refusing follow-up, accusing medical professionals of misconduct, expressing intent to seek legal action rather than treatment, almost laughed. It was neat, efficient, weaponized paperwork. I am not refusing treatment, I said, loud enough for the camera. I am pursuing treatment outside the implicated facility due to documented negligence concerns. That is my right as a parent and my obligation as an attorney who has seen settlements bury truth. Denise's eyes flickered, but she stayed in role. We still need to verify Emma's condition tonight. No, I said. You need a hearing. Which you'll get. I will see you in court at 9 a.m. I'm filing an emergency motion to vacate this order on the grounds of ex parte misrepresentation and abuse of process. Her partner shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, do you have a warrant to enter my home without consent? No, Denise admitted, then good night. I stepped back inside, locked the door, and immediately called my old mentor, Judge Leland. Retired, but still sharp as a scalpel. When I told him, he didn't waste words. They're trying to get temporary custody so the hospital can treat her without you blocking it. You've got 6 hours to pull their teeth before they use the order to walk her out. I went to work. Affidavit of facts. Exhibit A, photo of Emma's mark, time-stamped before any alleged refusal of care. Exhibit B, Daniel's internal memo. Exhibit C, hospital purchase orders for lot K47, with the foreign recall notice. I left out Daniel's name for now. No need to burn my source unless cornered. By 3 a.m., the motion was filed, and I had confirmation it was on the docket for the morning emergency calendar. I sat in the dim light of my kitchen, listening to the hum of the fridge and the soft static of the baby monitor. Every creak of the house sounded like a warning. Around 4:15, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text, they'll try something else. Before court. Watch the driveway. No signature, but I didn't need one. I peeked through the blinds. A black SUV was parked half a block down, engine off, no lights. I could just make out the faint glow of a cigarette inside. They weren't here for conversation. They were here to wait. To see if they could catch me slipping. The sun was just beginning to lift over the rooftops when I heard Emma stir. I went to her crib, lifted her, and held her against my chest. Her cheek brushed mine, that faint mark still there, stubborn and undeniable. I whispered into her hair, they're going to regret thinking they could scare me. I didn't know if I was promising her or warning them. At 8:47 a.m., as I was loading my briefcase, the front door rattled, not with a knock, but with the sharp, metallic scrape of a key turning in the lock. The scrape of a key jolted me into motion. I scooped Emma onto my hip and hit record on my phone with the other hand. Who is it? I called, keeping my voice level. A pause, then a professional cheerfulness that made my teeth ache. Home Health, Ms. Clark. We're here for a wellness check before court. Hospital coordinated. You do not have consent, I said, moving closer so the camera caught the knob. Step away from my door. I slid the deadbolt across with a loud, intentional click, then held the lens to the peephole. 2 figures, scrubs and clipboards. One held a key I didn't recognize, shiny and new. I'm calling the police to report attempted unlawful entry. I said, and did. The SUV half a block away flicked to life and rolled off without lights. The scrubbed pair retreated, heads down, as if embarrassed by their own choreography. By the time I buckled Emma into her car seat, my hands had stopped shaking. Courtrooms can terrify, but they are also boxes with rules, and today I needed those rules like oxygen. Emergency calendar is a parade of small disasters. The judge, gray suit, eyes like winter, looked at us all as if he'd seen this movie before. On one side, the CPS attorney with a stack of forms and the gently pitying tone of someone who believes she's right. On the other, a man in a slate tie I recognized from hospital ads, now seconded as outside counsel. Denise sat behind them, spine straight, eyes on the table. I took the other table, set down my thin folder, and placed Emma's monitor face up so the soft ocean of her breathing became the room's metronome. The judge read the order once, twice, then peered at me over the rim of his glasses. Ms. Clark, you're the mother and also an attorney. You filed to vacate ex parte. Proceed. I stood. The words came like steps on stones I'd chosen hours earlier. Your Honor, the order rests on misrepresentations that I am refusing care. I am refusing coordination with an implicated facility after receiving credible evidence of a contaminated medical device, Lot K47, used on my 6-month-old. I have Exhibits A through D. A. The mark, time-stamped and consistent with a known chemical burn from a compromised silver nitrate stick. B. Internal memo acknowledging the recall abroad. C. Purchase orders to the hospital for the recalled lot, post-recall. D. An attempted entry into my home this morning by home health agents without consent, captured on video. The judge tapped his pen. Hospital counsel? Slate tie stood. Smooth voice, even smoother smile. Your Honor, this is overwrought. Silver nitrate sticks are standard. The lot Ms. Clark references was cleared domestically. She is catastrophizing a birthmark while fomenting litigation. The hospital is concerned for the infant's well-being given the mother's adversarial posture. I didn't look at him. I looked at Denise. Who referred, Ms. Santos? The intake says confidential, but you're under oath now. The judge's gaze slid to her. Answer. She swallowed. A risk manager at the hospital called it in. Said Mom was interfering? With necessary care. Name, I said. She stared at the table. Alan Pope. Hospital counsel didn't flinch, which told me everything about his prior knowledge. The judge made a small note. Miss Clark, why withhold the name of your credible source? I'm protecting a whistleblower, Your Honor. But I'll tender the documents he provided for in-camera review. He nodded once. Do that. He turned to the CPS attorney. Remove a child ex parte because a parent wants a second opinion? No. Vacated. Ms. Clark, you will take the child to an unaffiliated pediatric dermatologist by close of business. Hospital counsel, your client is subject to a preservation order, supply logs, barcode records, procurement communications for the last 18 months, and video from the pediatric floor for the date in question. No deletions, no routine cycling. I'm appointing a special master for chain of custody. Parties return Friday. The gavel didn't bang, but the sound in my chest did. I thanked the court, collected my copy stamped in blue, and caught Denise's eye. For a second, something like relief crossed her face. Then it was gone. Outside, the air tasted cleaner. 2 steps into the hall, a familiar voice stopped me. Ms. Clark. Dr. Harris stood by the water fountain, smaller than she'd seemed in the exam room, fingers wrapped around a manila envelope like a flotation device. I shouldn't, but I can't watch this happen again. She slid me the envelope. Inside, 3 photographs of babies with the same stain on their faces, dates scrawled on the back. A printed email thread with subject line, Re, K47 vendor. Variants, where Alan Pope wrote, will move through inventory, risk acceptable. A final page, a discharge note template with a line already filled, parent advised of benign nevus. Follow-up in 1 month, they made us minimize, not diagnose, she whispered. If anyone asks, you didn't get this from me. Why did you freeze when I said I'm a lawyer? I asked, because I knew they'd use that to paint you as combative. I was trying to figure out how to help without losing my license. Her eyes were wet but steady. Take care of your daughter. Take care of the others, too. I drove straight to the children's hospital across town. The dermatologist was brisk and careful, an island of competence. She examined Emma under a Woods lamp, took high-resolution photos, and dictated into a recorder, lesion consistent with chemical cautery staining and superficial chemical burn, pattern not typical for vascular birthmarks. Recommend avoiding further exposure to caustic agents. She printed it, signed it, handed me 2 copies. You'll want these for court. On the way to the parking garage, my phone buzzed. An unknown sender, subject line, chain of custody. No body text, just a link to a cloud folder. Inside, a grainy delivery room video. A nurse's gloved hand brushing past my newborn daughter's cheek while prepping the umbilical stump, the applicator tip dark and dripping. In the corner of the frame, a sticker on the wrapper, K47. Someone off camera says, low and impatient, make a note, but don't chart the vendor. A man's voice. I played it 3 times, then once more with my eyes closed. When I opened them, my reflection in the phone looked like someone who had crawled out of a fire and kept walking, forwarded the link to my mentor and to a secure drive I didn't name. Then I called Daniel. No answer. Straight to voicemail. I texted, you were right. Where are you? Traffic pinned us on the way home. In the rearview, Emma slept, the thumb by her mouth, oblivious to the scaffolding I was erecting around her life. At a red light, a sedan pulled up beside us. The driver glance lingered too long. When the light changed, he didn't move. I did. He stayed behind. At home, an envelope leaned against my door, unmarked. It was heavier than paper. Inside, on a bed of foam, sat a single silver nitrate applicator in sterile packaging. The lot number was different this time. K48. Beneath it, a note typed in a friendly sans serif, consider this a courtesy copy. You're not the only lawyer with a baby. I took a photo, sealed the envelope in a Ziploc, and slid it into the freezer like evidence, because that's what it was. Then I locked every lock in the house twice and sat at the table where this started. I drafted a letter to the State Board of Medicine. I drafted a complaint. I drafted a press email that I didn't send yet, listing dates and names and the shape of a stain that looked like a wine spill and wasn't. My phone vibrated. A number I didn't know again. I answered, ready to record. A whisper, they found me, Daniel said, voice chopped by static. Don't come. Don't call. Check your email. I put something there you can't unsee. And don't let them near. The special master. The line went dead. A second later, my inbox dinged. New message. No subject. The attachment began to download: procurement spreadsheets, vendor side letters, a contract rider with a clause highlighted in yellow, acceptance of manufacturing variances up to 2% if price reduced. A car door slammed outside. Not tentative. Decided. Footsteps on my porch. No knock this time. Just the rustle of paper sliding under the door, the kind that makes its own threat. It was a settlement offer. Generous. Confidential. Sign within 48 hours or the investigation into a certain pattern of professional misconduct at my firm would become public, complete with forged emails that made my stomach drop because they were good enough to stick for a while. I looked at Emma asleep on the monitor, then at the offer, then at the freezer where K48 waited like a future. People think justice is a gavel. Sometimes it's a refusal. I picked up a pen and wrote one sentence across the top of the offer: rejected, see you in open court. When I opened my laptop to file, the screen didn't wake. Power cut. The house sank into a hush that felt intentional. In the dark, the baby monitor blinked once, then twice, then went black. I stood so fast the chair fell behind me. Somewhere in the street, an engine idled. Somewhere on my porch, a breath waited. I reached for Emma's room and for the baseball bat I keep behind the door, and in the split second before I moved, my phone lit with a final text from an unknown number, 4 words I knew were both a threat and a promise: see you Friday, counselor.